part of our brain that mediates our stress and trauma response doesn't really know the difference between something happening miles away and something happening right in front of you. So that part of your brain doesn't realize, like, oh, I'm watching a video on my phone of events that occurred in Utah, in the Ukraine.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Monday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From a framework deal to allow TikTok to continue operating in the U.S., to the reopening of Utah Valley University after the killing of Charlie Kirk. But first this morning, our international correspondent in Tel Aviv gave us a look at diplomatic efforts between the U.S. and Israel amid the ongoing fallout from Israel's attack on Hamas leadership in Qatar. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Israel and met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and his visit comes as Israel intensifies its operations in Gaza City. That's in an effort to take out Hamas. It also follows Israel's attack on Doha. They say was intended to target Hamas leaders. Qatar is hosting a summit with leaders from other Arab and Muslim countries following that attack. And we've just learned that Rubio will travel to Qatar and the United Kingdom this week. That's according to a senior State Department official. Marco Rubio and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to the media earlier.
We are focused on what happens now. What happens next? What role can Qatar play possibly in reaching an outcome here that leads not just to the end of this hostilities, not just to the release of all of the hostages, both living and deceased, not just the disarmament and elimination of Hamas, but also a better future for the people of Gaza, which isn't possible as long as Hamas exists, which isn't possible as long as 48 hostages are being held. And so we're going to continue to encourage Qatar to play a constructive role in that regard. We're focused because at the end of the day, no matter what has happened, these fundamentals still remain. There is still a Hamas, there is still 48 hostages, and there is still a war going on.
International correspondent Blake Sifton is in Tel Aviv for us now live. And Blake, what else did Rubio and Netanyahu say following their meeting today?
Good morning, Holly. President Trump has repeatedly expressed his displeasure with this Israeli attack on Hamas's leadership in Qatar. Of course, Qatar being a major U.S. ally, and the United States was also upset that they received very little warning of this attack. However, none of that displeasure was on display when Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and held a joint press conference following their meeting in Jerusalem today. The two appeared intent on portraying a united front. Rubio reiterated his support for what Netanyahu has been demanding for some time now, which is the full release of all 48 Israeli hostages at once and the elimination of Hamas. Netanyahu took the occasion of the press conference to once again say that Israel will continue to go after Hamas's leadership, even in safe havens like Qatar, saying that they would be targeted wherever they are. He also again took pains to distance the United States from this attack, saying that it was a wholly independent decision and we assume full responsibility. Now, he also seemed to acknowledge for the first time that the leadership of Hamas was not killed in that attack, saying that the strike didn't fail because it had one message: you can hide, you can run, but we'll get you. Now, looking to move on from what has clearly been a very unpleasant and divisive issue between key allies, we heard, of course, Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that he is now focused on what happens next. And for him, that is a trip to Doha, Qatar, where he is expected tomorrow to meet and reassure Qatari leaders.
And Blake, what can you tell us about the emergency summit underway in Qatar today?
So as Rubio is meeting Israeli officials here in Israel, regional leaders from across the Arab and Muslim world are in Doha. They're there to express solidarity with Qatar as well as formulate a joint response. Ahead of that summit, Qatar's prime minister accused Israel of state terrorism and said that the attack on Hamas's leadership in Doha was an attack on the principles of mediation itself. But he did vow that Qatar would continue in its role as mediator. Now, attending this summit are the leaders of the Palestinian Authority, of Iran, of Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. So among that list, you have countries that are enemies of Israel, like Iran. You have countries that have had long-standing, decades-long peace agreements with Israel, like Jordan and Egypt. You have countries that only recently normalized ties with Israel, like the United Arab Emirates. And you have Saudi Arabia, who Israel desperately wants to normalize ties with. Now, these countries are all very likely to condemn the attack, but what concrete action they take remains to be seen. A draft resolution that was prepared by foreign ministers yesterday was seen by the media, and while it doesn't contain any diplomatic or economic actions against Israel, it does warn that Israel's actions are threatening those efforts to normalize ties with countries in the region and maintain its normalized ties with countries in the region, and that is the message that's certainly to get the attention of Israel's government.
All right, international correspondent Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv for us. Thank you so much, Blake. A framework deal has been reached for the ownership of TikTok. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made that announcement this morning after weekend trade talks between the U.S. and China in Spain. Bessent says the deal would switch the popular social video platform to U.S. ownership. President Trump and Chinese Premier Xi Jinping are set to speak Friday to possibly finalize that agreement. Bessent says commercial terms have been agreed upon, but declined to share any details. Chinese officials have not yet confirmed the announcement and were not present at that press conference. Elon Musk bought $1 billion worth of Tesla shares on Friday. That's according to a regulatory filing made on Monday. Tesla investors viewed Musk's purchase as a vote of confidence in the company and a further commitment by Musk to stay at Tesla. The 413 million shares Musk now owns represents nearly 13% of the company. Musk has said he wants to control at least a quarter of Tesla. Investigators are still trying to figure out a motive in Charlie Kirk's killing. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said 22-year-old Tyler Robinson had left-leaning political views. That's based on interviews with families and friends of the suspect. Cox also noted Robinson is not cooperating with authorities. The Utah County Sheriff's Office says authorities are holding Robinson in a special housing unit. Coming up on Today As It Happened, Utah Valley University reopened this morning following the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk there last week. Stay with us here for Scripps News correspondent Tina Gugliano's reporting live from on campus. That's after the break. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. All right, let's check back in on our daily briefing of the day's top stories.
Charlie fundamentally believed in the potential and the promise of so many in this room, young, patriotic Americans. And he inspired millions of us across the country to get off the couch and to enter the political arena to fight for our nation's conservative values.
The leaders of the nation have been shaken, as have university students and college students and young people all across the country. It's as if the ground was shifted beneath us. We all felt it deep, deep inside. And in spite of that, we remember that our dear friend Charlie would never want us to be overcome by despair. He would want exactly the opposite.
And today, Utah Valley University reopens to students, and school officials say there will be additional mental health resources available for anyone who needs them. Scripps News Group's Tina Giuliano is live at Utah Valley University with details. Good morning.
Good morning, Holly. When we're talking about emotional support and coming together as a community, you're really seeing it embodied right behind me here with this memorial. You know, I've been covering this story since the tragedy happened on Wednesday, and this started as a singular bouquet in front of the UVU letters, and now it's just created this explosion of support letters and flags and flowers and candles. They're even creating another memorial across the fountains just on the other side of campus here. at UVU. And it's significant because a lot of the employees are coming back today. So they're passing by this memorial, kind of taking a beat, looking at it, and taking a moment to really center their emotions before heading into the office. Now, employees are returning today so they can prepare for the students that are coming later this week. Student services resume on Tuesday, and then classes all start again on Wednesday. And one of the reasons why today might be emotionally intense is many of the people who were at Wednesday's event where Charlie Kirk was shot are finally getting their personal items back. The FBI was investigating those for evidence, and students will be able to pick those up today. Mental health counselors and therapy dogs will also be on hand today to help people process what happened. And for the employees that came here to the memorial before heading into the office this morning, I spoke to two coworkers on the accounting team, and they said that they just looked at each other and they said, you know, I'm grateful to have you here during this time.
I've worked here 13 years, and we've certainly never had anything like this happen or anything else that would make me feel unsafe. But the heart's racing. It's not something any of us ever expected.
He said the way he's going to remember this campus is not from the evil that was here last Wednesday, but from earlier this year, where there were summer camps where youth groups would stay together and sing songs and laugh and share scripture verses together. That's how he wants to remember the UVU campus. Now, mental health counselors will also be at the Alumni Center for the next couple of days. They're there to help the students adjust from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. today and tomorrow, and then from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Wednesday. And so there are other resources you can reach out to if you're here on campus. They have resources through the student services. They have a Safe UT app and other resources through Timely Care. And another thing that we just really heard throughout the past couple of days, on Friday, the president of this university said, this is a defining moment for us all. May we not let the hatred overshadow the goodness of our UVU community and what we stand for. For now, reporting at UVU, Tina Giuliano, Scripps News Group.
And Tina, a quick question before I let you go. I mean, you have been talking to people over the past few days there, and we know that this is sort of a heightened time with political rhetoric around the country. Reaction has been mixed from some people saying, listen, we need to de-escalate. Other people saying, look, this is war, and using quotes, battle cries, right? So what are you hearing from people there who were affected most directly?
Yeah, I mean, for the students that are coming in, they're just wanting to get into the classroom again, and they feel fear, kind of a timidness coming back to campus. They're like kind of in disbelief that this happened here. So I think they're still going through those initial parts of the grieving process, and a lot of them are angry that it happened here at their school. For some of the employees, also, you know, greeting me today with tears. They were just like feeling like, you know, we got to get back into the swing of things. I can't believe this happened at where I've been working for the past several years, and I'm so sad that I see the kids being scared. So they're starting to go through those beginning grief process.
It's Scripps News Group's Tina Giuliano. Thank you so much for that update and for your coverage. It's been spectacular. Thank you. New York Governor Kathy Hochul endorsed Zohran Mamdani to be the next New York City mayor. In a New York Times opinion piece, Hochul wrote that while she disagrees with Mamdani on some issues, they do agree on addressing a level of affordability for New Yorkers. Mamdani is leading current New York City Mayor Eric Adams and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo in the polls. The city's general election is in November. King Charles is preparing to welcome President Trump for his second state visit to Windsor Castle this week. The visit will include a banquet and horse-drawn carriage rides as Britain aims to strengthen ties with the U.S. Up next on Today As It Happened.
President Trump and Party Chair Xi will speak on Friday to complete the deal, but we do have a framework for a deal with TikTok.
You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's jump right in. President Trump is hinting at a possible deal between the U.S. and China over TikTok. Now, that would mean the popular short-form video app could now fall under U.S. control. And this comes as top White House negotiators met with their Chinese counterparts in Madrid as part of a broader talk about American-Chinese economic policy. And as social media is increasingly being blamed as a radicalizing force in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So let's get to Scripps News White House reporter and producer Jacob Garden-Schwartz live with the latest. And Jacob, what are we learning about this deal?
Yeah, good afternoon, Holly. Well, we still don't have a ton of information, but there is certainly growing optimism within the Trump administration about what has been described as a, quote, framework for a TikTok deal ahead of Wednesday's deadline. You'll recall that it was last year bipartisan lawmakers overwhelmingly passed a law that would require the app to be sold by its Chinese owners in order to operate within the United States. After President Trump took over, however, he has continued to extend that deadline to force the sale, suggesting that these conversations with Chinese officials as well as American businesses who may be participating in the deal are ongoing. And we learned this morning, as you noted, that the president hinted at what may be this official deal. He wrote, quote, a deal was also reached on a certain company that young people in our country very much wanted to save. They will be very happy. Also announcing that he's speaking with China's President Xi Jinping this Friday. And as you suggested, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, as well as the United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer, were already in Madrid this morning for talks with their Chinese counterparts on a host of economic issues, including tariffs, trade, and of course the TikTok deal. Here's what the Treasury Secretary had to say about that framework. Listen.
We have a framework for a TikTok deal. The two leaders, President Trump and Party Chair Xi, will speak on Friday to complete the deal, but we do have a framework for a deal with TikTok. The framework is for it to switch to U.S.-controlled ownership, but again, I'm not going to get ahead of the leaders' call on Friday. We have a framework. They'll have to confirm the deal.
Not a lot of details there. The Treasury Secretary suggesting that this won't be ironed out until at least Friday, when the president and Chinese president are expected to connect on the phone. Chinese officials, for their part, just a few moments ago, confirming that they have reached, quote, a basic framework consensus for a TikTok deal, according to reports in Chinese state media, though they noted that China will never seek to reach any agreement at the expense of principles, interests of companies, or international fairness and justice. And of course, we have heard the president and other members of this administration announce so-called frameworks for deals many times before, and it is often weeks or even months before further details are revealed. So take this with many grains of salt, but certainly lots of optimism within the Trump administration that a deal will be reached in the near term. Holly.
And Jacob, do we think that the deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk might impact these conversations, since everybody is so focused right now on all of social media?
Yeah, exactly. Social media companies, TikTok among them, certainly receiving quite a bit of scrutiny. Utah Governor Cox among those who has really been forceful in his condemnation of these social media companies, suggesting that Americans, young Americans especially, should be logging off more, trying to engage in the real world, and that their frequency of use of some of these platforms could be contributing to the radicalization that we've seen resulting in some of these acts of political violence. Here's what the Utah governor had to say about some of that in recent days.
And I can't emphasize enough the damage that social media and the internet is doing to all of us. Those dopamine hits, these companies, trillion-dollar market caps, the most powerful companies in the history of the world, have figured out how to hack our brains, get us addicted to outrage, which is the same type of dopamine, the same chemical that you get from taking fentanyl, get us addicted to outrage and get us to hate each other.
How those comments, how this broad sort of anger towards social media, concerns about its impact on young people will factor into this potential TikTok deal, again, is really an open question, as we have very few details about the deal overall. But certainly one of the reasons that lawmakers wanted to force the sale of TikTok is because, as of right now, the TikTok algorithm, how it is and why it is that which videos shows up in your feed, is really a black box. We don't understand how that works, or Chinese officials at least have not been willing to share that that information. So if the company is forced to be sold to a U.S. company, it's possible that we might have at least a little bit more insight into the behind the scenes of how these apps work and perhaps measures that can be taken to avoid this kind of radicalization moving forward. Holly.
The U.S. Army revealed its Typhoon missile system in Japan for the first time on Monday. The land-based weapon can fire missiles that reach China's eastern coast. This is all part of a military exercise with more than 19,000 U.S. and Japanese troops. Now, that deployment is meant to deter China's growing assertiveness in that region. Japan has been rapidly building up its military to counter threats from China, North Korea, and Russia. President Trump is threatening to declare another national emergency in Washington, D.C. if local police do not help with immigration enforcement. The president's previous emergency declaration and federal takeover expired last week. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has ordered the city to cooperate with federal law enforcement, but did not specifically mention immigration officials. Trump posted on social media that he will not allow crime to come roaring back and will federalize the district again if necessary. Livestock and pets are missing after tornadoes hit southeastern Utah during the weekend. The strong winds damaged at least 3 homes, and those storms also hit the Navajo Nation reservation. We are told nobody was injured. Tornadoes are rare in that part of Utah. The Weather Service has only confirmed 2 there since 1950. Coming up on Today As It Happened, the suspect in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson will appear before the New York Supreme Court on Tuesday. Scripps News correspondent Alex Miller has been following Luigi Mangione's case, so stay with us for her preview of tomorrow's hearing after the break. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer here with your rundown of today's top stories.
Accused killer Luigi Mangione heading back to court on Tuesday morning. The 27-year-old Maryland man is facing charges in 3 different courtrooms for the December 2024 shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. It happened on a Manhattan street. Mangione has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges, but there still is a lot up in the air for each of these cases. Our national correspondent Alex Miller is joining us now to get us caught up to speed. And Alex, what can we expect from this hearing that is scheduled now to take place tomorrow?
Well, Mangione is facing murder, terrorism, and firearms charges in a New York state courtroom, and there's a little bit up in the air about what is going to be discussed. The defense is likely to request to suppress evidence, including a ghost gun, as well as that apparent manifesto that Mangione wrote. They say that evidence was obtained illegally. There's also questions about a psychiatric defense. There was a deadline back in August that his team was supposed to meet about whether they plan to use that defense. They blew right past that deadline, so we could see the judge ask about that. He could also set a trial date. Remember, there are other cases that still need to be heard, but as of now, that state case is the one that is set to go first, so he could set that date or he could step aside. And one other thing, Del, this is the first time that we are going to be in a courtroom after the defense accused the prosecution of obtaining medical evidence of Luigi Mangione, his health records from Aetna, without permission. And so that also could be brought up in the morning's hearing.
So, Alex, we know that he isn't just facing charges in that state courtroom. What else are we learning about any federal charges that he might be facing? And tell us about any overlap concerns.
Well, there definitely is overlap concerns. He is being charged federally in a New York State courthouse, or New York federal courthouse, rather, just around the corner, as well as in Pennsylvania. That New York hearing, that next one, is supposed to be in early December, where we are expected to get a trial date. There's also a hearing in Pennsylvania in early November. There has been a request put out that he attend that hearing in person. The U.S. Marshals have not said whether or not they are going to grant that request. But most importantly is this federal case, and that is because he is facing the death penalty in it. And federal prosecutors had a handshake agreement with the district attorney that the state case will go first, but that is not what Mangioni's team wants. They want to see that federal case go forward first, because they say if he's found guilty there, then it would essentially render the state case moot. They also have this issue of these terrorism charges that they are also trying to get thrown out. They are trying to delay both of these trials until further notice, and they are also trying to argue that one of the cases should be thrown out in New York because they say it is double jeopardy.
Alex, the response to Thompson's killing on social media is unlike anything that we have seen in recent years, but we know that a lot of these shooters radicalize each other. Now, prosecutors saying that this is the case with one mass shooting. What do we know?
Yeah, we have seen this happen over and over again. We know from that mass shooting just a little bit ago in Minnesota that that suspect had looked into other mass shooters online and praised those mass shooters on his ammunition. But here in New York, that is also the case. But it's not just Mangione influencing other mass shooters. He is having an impact on society at large. He has already raised $1.2 million for his defense. $1.5 million is the goal on their website. He is getting donations every single day. I want to read you just the last 24 hours. I went through some of these donations and the notes that went with them. Let's look at some of these. This one saying, enjoy the sun and stimulation out in the world on the 16th. Another person saying, feeling a lot of emotions about this. Keep your head high. You give me what money cannot buy, a desire to live. This person saying that helped him get out of a depression. Another post saying that they have that they will continue to put stickers and posters of him around their city. Another woman writing, giving $50 on her birthday, saying that she wanted to spread love and send him a little something in support of all they're going through. And this one got me. I donate every so often, this person said, but with the state of the world this week, I feel called to just donate a little bit more than I usually do. Emma there gave $50 to Luigi Mangione, and he is keeping track of all of these people who are donating, who are writing him letters on their website. You can see a yellow pad, a legal pad, where he is keeping track of every letter that he is written. His attorneys say he gets between 10 and 115 letters every single day, and you can see from the donations that people go on and cross-reference to see if he's received their letter. Prosecutors very concerned about this, writing, in fact, that they say, simply put, the defendant hope to normalize the use of violence to achieve ideological or political objectives. Since the murder, they say certain quarters of the public who openly identify as acolytes of the defendant have increasingly begun to view violence as acceptable or even necessary substitute for reasoned political disagreement. Prosecutors saying that they believe that he may have influenced the mass shooting here in New York just last month, where a shooter targeted NFL headquarters and killed 4 people, none of whom were actually part of the NFL business, but happened to work in that building. This comes, obviously, Del, at a time where we continue to see political violence increasing.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live for us in New York. Alex, as always, we thank you very much.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
If you were inciting violence, inciting others to political violence, that is a serious problem, and it's something we must address. There are not easy answers to this, but it's something we've got to address. Members of Congress are safe. They will be kept safe. They have security measures now at their residences, and personally, we can always enhance and do more and do better, and I think everyone's looking at that soberly right now after this unspeakable tragedy that befell our friend.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, let's jump right back into our rundown of the day's top stories.
I don't think that I'm alone in saying that Charlie was the smartest political operative I ever met.
The vice president did host Kirk's podcast, Turning Point. The show took place inside the White House complex. It lasted for 2 hours. Today's show had a number of White House officials as guests, so take a listen.
Everyone knew him. as this fearless debater, this guy who would take the conservative message into hostile places and inspire younger generations to have courage. One thing that's hit a lot of those young Americans over the last week was how Charlie was there for them when others were not. When they were afraid to speak their minds, when they were afraid of what a professor would say, when they were afraid that they would be shouted down by their peers, Charlie was there, showing them that they could be courageous and that they could be bold.
Well, the death of Charlie Kirk is leading to real-life changes and concerns on Capitol Hill. Specifically, the Trump administration is now asking for more money for protection. Officials say they want Congress to set aside $58 million in security funding for both the executive and the judicial branches. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live in Washington, D.C. with the details. And Nate, let's recap here. Has the security posture changed for members of Congress in the wake of last week's shooting?
Not in the wake of last week's shooting, Del, but it has changed since the death of Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota state legislator who was murdered earlier this summer. Lawmakers were given an additional $5,000 or so each month to use for their personal security. That's raising a stipend up from what was $150 to now $5,000. But there is some acknowledgement here that when that money runs out at the end of September, lawmakers will need to renew it. There's new discussions on Capitol Hill, both sides of the Capitol, the Senate and the House of Representatives, about what that increased funding is going to look like. And I'm glad you brought up that $58 million. That is specifically for two branches of government, the executive, the Trump administration, and the judicial branch, the courts, not for Congress. Congress has to appropriate its own money to deal with congressional security, something that House Speaker Mike Johnson just told my producer Sam Lisker a few moments ago is something they're working on right now. Take a listen.
It is kind of a late-breaking development, and that $58 billion is for the executive and judicial branches. We have to protect our judges and those who serve in those two branches, but also, of course, in Congress. And so we're looking at an amount that would be appropriate for a continuing resolution in a short term to protect members in the ledge branch as well. We don't have consensus around that yet because all of this is pretty rapidly developed over the last few days. Members of Congress are safe. They will be kept safe. They have security measures now at their residences, and personally, we can always enhance and do more and do better. And I think everyone's looking at that soberly right now after this unspeakable tragedy that befell our friends.
And Del, look, that just ties into the larger government funding question. That is something that lawmakers will still need to work out. They're currently working on a path forward on government funding. So far, nothing has been released yet about what that increased security could look like for members of Congress. That as the flags over Capitol Hill returned to full mast today after mourning the death of Charlie Kirk. For many conservative Republicans, this was someone who they were very close with. For many Democrats, too. A lot of concerns about this increased specter of political violence up here on Capitol Hill. A lot of lawmakers go to their home communities to hold events with constituents, many telling reporters, myself included, they're now rethinking that in the wake of that shooting.
Yeah, 85 members of Congress, mostly Republicans, at that vigil last night for Charlie Kirk. Tell me, what could bolstered funding look like for member security?
Well, look, there's a lot of discussion. Do they keep that $5,000 monthly allowance for members of the House of Representatives? They could use that for private security, likely not for the full month. It probably wouldn't be enough to pay for that. But they could certainly try and use that funding in addition to their campaign funds for private security, something that members have done in the past. Over here on the Senate side of the Capitol, there's increased discussions about a pilot program which could give every single U.S. senator security in their home state. Right now, when lawmakers leave here in Washington, D.C., it's up to them to coordinate their own security if they have any. For the most part, the vast majority of members of Congress don't have congressional security. Just certain members of congressional leadership have round-the-clock protection from Capitol Police. For other members, they're largely left to fend for themselves. There's some acknowledgement in the wake of what happened last week that might need to change, or at least take steps in the direction of changing. A lot of lawmakers very concerned for their own safety.
Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed for us live in Washington, D.C. Nate, as always, thank you very much.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
In the wake of violent attacks caught on camera, violent videos are permeating on social media. I'm Maya Rodriguez in Washington. Coming up, how this is affecting people's mental health and what experts say you can do to minimize your exposure.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, let's jump right back into our rundown of the day's top stories.
Maureen Comey is suing the Trump administration. She says she wants her old job back. She's a former federal prosecutor and daughter of former FBI Director James Comey. Her suit says she was fired without cause and because her father was a frequent critic of the president. Trump fired James Comey back in his first term. Maureen Comey handled some big-name sex abuse cases, including the prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Sean Diddy Combs. The Girl Scouts want you to start dreaming about a brand new cookie flavor. The 2026 cookie season will explore S'mores, which take flavors and inspiration from Rocky Road ice cream or s'mores. Think chocolate, marshmallow, and toasted almond flavors. Of course, nothing can replace Thin Mints with a nice bowl of ice-cold ice cream, but I was told by our producers that is an old man flavor, or as we like to refer to it, old school. Bad news, Bengals fans. Quarterback Joe Burrow could be out for the next 3 months, needs surgery for his injured left toe. Burrow was injured after he was sacked yesterday by Jaguars defensive tackle Eric Armstead in the first half. The Bengals, by the way, did go on to get the win, 31-27. Scripps News has been piecing together information concerning the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Scripps News senior national investigative correspondent Lori Jane Gleehaw joins us now live with all the details. And Lori Jane, is the FBI releasing any new information about their investigation?
Hi, Del. Yeah, the FBI director is now saying investigators have learned of a note in which they say the suspect declared he had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and that he was going to take it. We've also obtained some of the frantic first 911 calls that came in from people on the ground and from many of their loved ones.
911, what's the address of the emergency? There's been a shooting at UTU, Charlie Kirk event.
Frantic phone calls poured in last week to Central Utah 911 after a gunman opened fire at an outdoor event at Utah Valley University, shooting and killing conservative speaker and debater Charlie Kirk.
The Kirk speaker at UVU just got shot in the head.
What's the address?
UVU.
And what happened?
He's a speaker, famous guy, Speaker Kirk.
Where
he just got shot in the middle
you?
of his speech. I'm in the parking lot. Everybody's running. The whole UVU is running.
Okay.
He just got shot.
He got rushed off in an SUV, a black SUV. He got right in the neck, so I don't think he has long.
Okay. Did you see did you see it happen?
Yes, I saw everything.
Authorities announced on Friday they took 22-year-old Tyler Robinson into custody. Monday, FBI Director Kash Patel telling Fox News DNA evidence has been collected and processed from various crime scenes, including a screwdriver left on the rooftop where the suspected shooter was believed to have been perched and a towel believed to have been wrapped around the gun.
And I can report today that the DNA hits from the towel that was wrapped around the firearm and the DNA on the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox appearing on multiple news shows over the weekend, revealing that the suspect has not been cooperating with authorities, but telling CNN this weekend that official charges against the suspect will be filed this week. The governor says authorities are questioning the shooter's roommate and romantic partner, a male who is transitioning to female, still trying to confirm a motive.
We're trying to figure it out. I know everybody wants to know exactly why and point the finger, and I totally get that. I do too. And so I just want to be careful, as I haven't read all of the interview transcripts, and so we'll have to wait and see what comes out.
And the governor did disclose other details during this weekend's TV appearances, including that the accused shooter's acquaintances have been cooperative with investigators so far. However, officials say the suspect is not cooperating and has not confessed to them, Del, to committing this shooting.
Lori Jane, have authorities said anything else today about any other evidence that they might be reviewing?
Yes, there is a lot of evidence, as you can imagine. A spokesperson for the FBI director says one of the things that investigators are going to be reviewing is a group chat that had more than 20 members in it that is linked to the suspect, Del.
Also, you said the FBI might be talking about a note that mentioned Charlie Kirk. What can you say about that?
Yes, the FBI director said the original note was written before the shooting. It has since been destroyed, but the FBI has been able to confirm its content with forensic evidence and with interviews. And we expect to learn more about that evidence when formal charges are filed, which is expected, Del, to happen tomorrow.
Our senior national investigative correspondent, Lori Jane Glehoff, for us. Lori Jane, as always, we thank you very much. The killing of Charlie Kirk and the recent stabbing death of a Ukrainian refugee on board a train are just two examples where violent and graphic videos circulated online almost instantaneously. Scripps News national correspondent Maya Rodriguez is looking about the exposure and how exposure to violent video affects the general public and possibly other criminals.
Well, Del, as you know, many news organizations, including Scripps News Group, have policies in place when it comes to when or what graphic videos we air. That is done to protect victims, victims' families, and our viewers from unnecessary exposure to violence. But social media doesn't always follow the same guidelines, and experts say that's having an impact on people's mental health and sense of safety.
Millions of people watched the moment conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was shot and killed during a speaking event in Utah. Video of the shooting immediately circulated on X, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Easy access to violent videos on computers and phones is leading to chronic stress in Americans, according to clinical psychologist and trauma expert Dr. Robin Koslowitz.
You're scrolling TikTok and all of a sudden an image just hits you between the eyes, and that's terrifying.
Koslowitz says watching a shooting or attack online is traumatic, even if you weren't directly involved.
The part of our brain that mediates our stress and trauma response doesn't really know the difference between something happening miles away and something happening right in front of you, because you're actually looking at something. It looks like it's happening right in front of you.
Criminologist Dr. Alex Del Carmen says these videos can potentially provide online inspiration to someone looking to commit a crime. In effect, creating a copycat.
In other words, they're going to copycat the technique and the style and engage in a criminal act.
Del Carmen says watching the raw footage of an actual criminal act has a greater impact than the fictitious crimes you'd see in video games or in the movies.
There's some distinction between the, quasi-reality and the real act.
Experts say violent images can also potentially contribute to people feeling less safe, adding that ensuring safety guidelines are followed is key.
If you're struggling with how to deal with seeing violent images online, experts have a few tips. The first is to take regular breaks from social media. Experts also suggest reading news updates, not just watching videos. And for parents, make sure you are using the parental controls on your children's devices. Del?
Maya, I was just thinking about how baby boomers would react if they were watching a rom-com, for instance, on cable, and then these images came up. That's sort of what happens on social media. What does the research tell us about exposure to violence online and what it can do to our physical and also our mental health?
Well, one study from the National Academy of Sciences looked at what happened after the Boston Marathon bombings. And what they found is that the more hours people were exposed to news sites, videos, and images about it, the more stress they felt. The study's authors pointed out you shouldn't avoid the news altogether. However, they suggested monitoring your social media exposure, avoid doom scrolling, and not spreading graphic images online. Del?
This one spread even as we were sitting on the air. Our national correspondent, Maya Rodriguez. Maya, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Have a great Monday night.